Again, once everyone's done through the bar, make your way back to I'm going to do is announce all of our honorees. I know several of our honorees have left.
introducing everybody. I'll get you an agenda.
Okay, one of the things we've been doing for the last couple years, we do this event in about 29 different cities across North America. And every time we are getting ready to go to a city, we do pull all of our database. And the people that I'm going to announce are some of the people that are today's honorees. And we know that all of you are honorees just for the work you do in the cybersecurity space. That's why we put this conference on, open the bar. We try to celebrate you all. But I do have a small section of people that I am going to call out. Is Amon Nazar. He's a network architect from OC Superior Courts. Amon, come on up. Congratulations, Amon, for all your hard work in the industry. And for those of you standing in the back, there's 2 seats right here. They have your name on it. Come on up. Don't be shy. Okay, Jack Mullen, IT Director at Westpac Avocado. Jack Mullen, are you in the house? Jack? Well, he was here. Gia Nguyen, IT Security Manager from Veris Credit. All right, congratulations. I still have seats up in the front. There's no need to stand. Saggy Schnapp, Senior InfoSec Engineer at Lundquist. Saggy. See, they're so important they get called back to work. Oh, well, I know Terrence Davis is here, Chief Information Officer at the Department of Parks and Recreation of LA County. The star of the day. Congratulations, and thank you for being our keynote speaker today. A senior manager over at Visa, Joy. All right, congratulations. Again, there are seats in the front. No need to stand. Mikkel, is it Gaddegard, a software engineer at PlayStation. All right. Congratulations. Deetra Hammond, VP Technology Risk and Control at Corebridge Financial. Congratulations. Elsa Valdez, InfoSec GRC Analyst at Logix Federal Credit Union. Congratulations. Jose Valles, Information Technology Specialist at Woodbridge Pacific Group. Congratulations. Mary Wang, Software Engineer Manager at Northrop Grumman. Corey Williams, IT Security and Compliance Lead at Starter Brothers Markets. Sorry. See, I wish everyone would correct me. I wish I'd get corrected all the time because I'm always messing these names up. Annie Flippo, who is sitting on our panel, Chief Data Officer at Urgently. Thank you. Eric Freeman, CISO at QTC Management. Thank you, Eric. Oh, that's a long reach. Okay. Yeah, I needed that. Derek Lynn, Vice President of Information Systems and ISO at Pasadena Federal Credit Union. So excited to have you join our panel. Thank you, Derek. Last but not least, who arrived by the skin of his hair like 2 minutes ago, who is our moderator, Alan Ohanian, who is Information Security Officer from LA County Department of Children and Family Services and our moderator today. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the panelists. There are seats up at the front. I say before we start, come on, guys. There's a whole bunch of you in the back. There's all these seats. Help me out, Lorenzo. Try to get him back here, up here. Yeah, because Andrew, if you could help bring people up to the front. If I don't have people in the seats, all the streaming people are going to think no one's here. So please come up. Help us out. Okay, I am going to turn it over to Alan, and he will. I've pretty much announced most of the panelists, but I'll turn it over to Alan. Remember, any questions, watch for our tech team to bring the mic to you. And that's it. Let's welcome our panelists.
Thank you, Kim. Well, first and foremost, guys, give a plus for Kim. She's doing a great job coordinating this. Much, Kim. Great job. And I also like to keep her on her toes. I always arrive kind of a minute or two before. Anyway, well, my name is Alan. I'm a Chief Information Security Officer for Los Angeles County Department of Children Services. We are the largest child welfare agency. The great panel members. They will go around and introduce themselves and talk about what they do. But before that, well, we started a new year. I'm sure a lot of you guys have a lot of projects going on, a lot of incidents, a lot of cyber threats flying around in the news, and some of you in your organization, myself included. So we started this year, as far as our organization goes, all good, but now we have to deal with some large-scale threats. When I talk about threats, I'm not necessarily meaning like script kiddies or so forth, but a new technology that opens up a lot of doors for opportunities, yet opportunities for bad guys too. So it allows us to do our jobs better, more efficient, in a more automatic fashion way. However, it also comes with a huge risk. I'm mostly talking about AI. Anybody that doesn't know what AI is? You guys all know, right? Perfect. So when we started actually looking into this different functional areas of AI and how it can be integrated into our today's life and defense and an offense side, it becomes pretty scary. I don't know if you guys heard Tesla, every certain years, they announce their reports, they put out their safety reports. So apparently, one of their robots attacked one of the workers. You guys heard it, right? Yeah. Apparently this incident happens more than once, but some make it to the news. So without further ado, I'm gonna go around and kind of go over our panel members here. You guys are gonna introduce yourselves and talk about what you do, and then we'll go over the question. So I'll start with you.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Okay, yeah. Hi, welcome. I'm Annie Flippo. I am the Chief Data Officer of Urgently. There's another company here called Fastly, so yay for naming your company, very interestingly. So I work for a company that's a roadside assistance software and service company. So if your car has a breakdown, flat tire, got into an accident, we're sometimes the people behind who you call. So that's what I do, and my view from security's point of view is all from the data side. So,
thanks, Annie. Earlier, okay, there we go. One of the things that we were talking about earlier, and I think this is going to be fun for our panel. We'll talk about it. It's data the new currency, or is data the new oil? We'll talk about that in a minute. But my name is Demetrius Lazarikis. Laz is easier. I'm a career CISO, and I'm the CISO ambassador for Zyston. I work with emerging tech, and I also work with board members and senior leadership teams to better understand where risk to revenue is, board level reporting, and trying to stay ahead of cyber criminals as we think about protecting the business.
Thank you, sir. Hey, everybody. My name is Derek. I am the radical in this group. Oil is a good metaphor for data. I would even go so far as to say data is the new gold mine, or perhaps diamond, with the importance that we're placing on it to train various AI systems on knowing our world better. I think it's going to become more and more crucial. So I work as an information security professional in the credit union world, leaving one credit union, joining another, very exciting time for me. And some of you guys also know me as an author, so you can find me on Amazon.com with my books. And that's, I think that's all I will say for about myself. And my books have nothing to do with information security, just so you know.
That was the commercial break.
That's a pretty good plug. Hey, Eric Freeman here. I'm the CISO for QTC Management. QTC is largely a federal contractor in providing medical services to three-letter agencies all across the world. We have to do that in such a collapsed time that we are aided by a lot of technology, and that's where I come into play. And to talk about data, I would say that it's the classification of data that would determine if it's gold or if it's diamond. So that's my take at it.
Great job. Thank you, guys. Did I say you're keeping the best for the last? This is what it is. So we talked about data. Actually, based on recent reports, the value of data surpassed oil in 2017. That speaks volumes, right? And if you look at it from various perspectives, having data points and data about individuals, about organizations, about things that we do, the product, can go really, really far, because technically speaking, if someone wants to manipulate people by getting the data points about the individual, can easily do that. Social media does it, some news agencies do so, and the fake news, right? So moving forward, let's talk about the threat. So as I said, now we are in a verge of technology emerging to a whole different concept, whole different new world, where we are utilizing neural networks, and these networks eventually will have their mind of their own. So artificial intelligence will become one of the de facto standards. So with that said, I'm gonna go around and ask each one of you, what are the emerging threats that you guys see, and what are the plans, short-term or long-term, to tackle those?
Yeah, I think we already touched a lot about this. I think the emergent threats or existing threats is ransomware. I think there is very hard to, you plan your best to not get ransomware. You have training with your employees. You have annual training or monthly training. We have surprise spam that we try to lure people into clicking and see who actually clicks. It's about 10% of our employee that clicks it, and then they get sent another email say, please retake the training. Even that, there's we have a lot of vendors, right, because we're a roadside assistant company. So like, just think about MGM Grand Resort that just had a hack in 2023. They shut down 12 hotels for 10 days. Their slot machines did not work, and they cannot bring in money, and there's a lot of disruption to their operations. Now, as a roadside assistant company, we cannot be down for even an hour. Like, people on the side of the road right now, frigid cold in certain states, we can't leave people stranded. So we have to have very tight security measures to make sure we don't even get at ransomware. So that is one of my top threat that we're thinking of.
Thanks, Annie.
Thanks, Annie. +1 for ransomware. I think, so it's interesting, right? As we talk today, and as the speakers were talking about, and Annie touched on it right here, right? Preservation of human life. We have to be thinking, I mean, those guys are creative, right? MGM went down, and some other things. Those are some pretty creative attacks. The other attacks, right, ransomware, Meridian Link. I hate to call them out, but it's a case study that we can use. How many people are not familiar with what happened at Meridian Link? Everybody's familiar? They're a publicly traded company. Then they took ransomware, criminals came in, then ratted them out to the SEC and said, hey, look, they're not playing by the rules. So as ransomware becomes more advanced, I think the one thing that I've always embraced is user behavior analytics. Just understanding, is it a human, is it a script, is it a bot, is it a machine, and trying to understand that. So UBA or UEBA, I tend to lean on. So preservation of human life, what's happening with ransomware, and then some of the solutions that monitor it. don't hate me, but identity access management is critical for UBA, right?
Thank you. So earlier today, a fascinating came up about, hey, what about AI versus AI? So happy to say that we're not quite at that point yet, but as far as emerging threats, we're definitely seeing a new class of phishing emails that are AI assisted. This is how easy it is. The bad guys can go to ChatGPT and say, hey, write me an email that is professional sounding, that is convincing to do XYZ. And it'll come out free of grammatical errors or spelling errors. So you can no longer use those as signals to try to help you catch the bad guys. And instead, you have to utilize some of the tools. One of the sponsors of this conference, Abnormal Security, is a tool that I used. It's a mixture of algorithms and machine learning assistance as well. So it'll look for signals. Some of the signals are like sense of urgency. Hey, you owe this money, you gotta pay this money right now. Some signals are less detectable by users, like an email that was sent by a domain that was created maybe last month, created specifically to send phishing emails. Users won't be able to tell, but the machines can. So we're not talking about AI versus AI, we're talking about AI assistance, AI-assisted humans versus AI-assisted information security team members. So not quite Godzilla versus King Kong, but I think one day that's exactly what we're gonna see.
Yeah, I come at this with a different spin. I'm a technologist, so I think as technology emerges, you know, whether it's on the opposite side from an adversary, and they leverage technology to attack, we will leverage technology to defend, right? And so it's all about speed to adoption. My concern and what keeps me awake at night from an emerging threat perspective is the human firewall, right? And that's what we all forget sometimes, right? Is that my concern is that you know, we live in an attention economy, and you know, every organization on this planet is looking for efficiencies, and many of that comes through the reduction in staff, which means that staff are multitasking and they're having to take on 3 and 4 different roles, and they are fatigued and they are plagued by the inability to give a particular task the right amount of attention. And what's the result of that? What's the risk of that? The risk of that is I missed that phishing email, right? That's number one. Or I'm so busy and I got to take my 5-year-old kid to a soccer match at 4 o'clock, and I have to log off and get to that park that I was quick to respond or quick to not see something that come across at the end of the day because my attention I wasn't giving a task the full attention. And the result of that is a successful compromise. And so we at my level and for all of us professionals, we have to continue to keep our focus on the human firewall, those employees. Keep pushing out the security awareness training. Find those unique ways to reach and engage with those employees, whether it's a 30-second video or a quick read, a news article, just to keep everybody's mind aware and just to ensure that everyone is focused on protecting the organization.
Love that. I'm so happy you guys touched on the human element. So when I was getting into technology, I started with a computer science background, and then I got cybersecurity, got my MBA, MS cybersecurity. Then, as a candidate of a PhD, a student in organizational psychology, I realized at the end of the day, it's all about people. We can have the greatest tools and technology in place, but when a human being decides to respond to an email, decides to click on a link, decides to provide critical or confidential information, there's no tools, at least today, that will tell you, hey, you're not supposed to do that. I'm so happy you guys mentioned that. We talked about MGM. Do you guys know how long it took to breach MGM? Anybody wants to guess? Less than 10 minutes phone call. It took less than 10 minutes phone call to their IT department. They reset the password. Before you know, everything else was down the hill. They got into their servers, they locked it down, and if you go and search online, you will find out what the steps they took. But it literally took 10 minutes or less phone call to an IT department. So what does that tell you? MGM being such a great financially well-off company, I'm sure they have all the great tools in place, but again, that doesn't eliminate the human factor. So I think most of you, if not all, touched on awareness training. So today we have these canned trainings that for compliance reasons, we have to have them. But based on your opinion, first of all, how do you guys manage the awareness training in your organization? And how do you measure success? And what are the ways that you are trying to make it more personal to the employees? Because, well, I can sit there and say, well, yeah, I need to take this privacy or phishing training, but really, what is in it for me? How is that relevant to my job that I do today? I have to deal that within my organization where in addition to tons of training that they have to take, now they have to take the security and privacy training. What the heck? Social worker is not interested in that. So how we can make it more personalized to their job function, relatable to their job function so they know, well, it's not just security in a box, but it directly ties to my business and what I do. You wanna?
Okay, so one of the things that I found successful in my career, I'm going to tell you a quick story about this. I tend to bend the rules. It's true. No, I do. And I think one of the things that happened to me earlier in my career, I was a CISO for a Fortune 100, and I was put in a box. It was like, hey, look, no, we have compliance training every year. And I said, well, no, I need AppSec training. That's different than compliance training, right? And part of the challenge for me was getting everybody motivated. But what I found to work was when I went to HR and I said, hey, listen, here are the 3 things I need from our engineers. If they can write good code fast and protect the business, they should be rewarded. And HR looked at me and they said, hey, that's genius. How do we measure that? And what I found is partnering with HR and putting that in our performance review, it went for days. That was part 1. Part 2, promoting the event. We put flyers everywhere. It was like, come learn how to break a website. Come learn how to take, take data and information and do bad things with it. And it was this mindset of, look, we're trying to protect the business, but we also have to look at it as running a business. And if we have a performance review with HR on an engineering team that's writing good quality code, that went a long way. So there's 3 layers. We had our annual training, then we had specialized training for the engineers. We applied the same principles for the engineers in performance to exec staff and other business leaders to say, training can't be the same for everybody one time a year. It has to be well thought out and put into a plan where we could actually have a performance review against it. I'll pause there.
Great, Les. Who wants to take next?
Yeah, so when it comes to training, one approach that has worked well for the organizations that I was at has been a comedy approach. What I mean by that, there's a company called KnowBe4. It's Kevin Mitnick's company. He passed away, but he was one of the more well-known hackers from back in the retro 80 days. Anyhow, what they do is that they script out their training material with a lot of lighthearted comedy material, but nevertheless make the point. So they are relatively short in duration, and they help the users engage. They keep the user's attention. As Eric pointed out, we now live in this attention economy. We have to optimize every little bit of it that we can get.
No, I love that. I love that. And I'll add on. Just what we do is we partner with a company and we are monitoring trends, attack trends, and other things. And what we do is instead of putting out, obviously everyone has to complete their annual security awareness training for compliance, and it's the check in the box. What we try to do is make it a little bit more engaging, and so we do a monthly crossword puzzle. Our employees love it, right? It comes out, it takes 3 minutes. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of IQ to complete it in 3 minutes. And the theme around the crossword puzzle is linking to that particular trend, whether it's a business email compromise whether it's phishing, whether it's something dealing with social media. But that's the theme for that particular crossword puzzle. It takes 3 minutes. It keeps everyone engaged.
Great. So gamifying and making it fun for the users goes very far. And of course, the motivation factor is always there. They need to know, why am I supposed to do this and what's in it for me? Derek, I'm going to start with you. How do you measure success? So you have these trainings, you launch the trainings, everybody takes it. How do you measure the success of the security awareness program? I'll start with
So in the example I gave before, what we did was for the full-time employees, we measured success by the good code that was being released into production. It would picked up by the scan. If it was picked up by a scanner, it would be like a red flag, and it wouldn't go in their performance review. But we'd have to, hey, look, what's going on? Do we have the right controls? Do we have the right testing? Did education work or not? That worked really, really well. And we also did like on-the-spot gift cards, and it was like, hey, look, your team did X. You get a day off, or you get food for a week, and we just did some really creative things.
click on this link to get your gift card.
I'm sorry? Yeah, click on this to get your gift card. The other thing but what it taught us though is something that we learned in that process. We also had to measure the contractors, because the contractors contracts with us for writing good code didn't exist. So when we put the contractors through training, there was no motivation for them. Oh yeah, we're going to write bad code on a carousel, or we'll go to Pastebin and pull some code out or whatever. And all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, we've got to up our game with the contractors as well. So we started measuring the SLAs and the time to remediate, and then reported it back to the third-party agency. But I think it goes back to what Alan's saying is, you got to be able to measure it. And if you don't have that baseline, then we have problems because we don't have alignment. And we don't have alignment, then we can't go to the business and say we've got some issues, right?
Great point, Les.
No.
Yeah.
So just one thing to add about what Ellen said, gamify. Gamification. That a lot of significant work is being done today to take the lessons that we have learned from these social media or online games, things that work, things that hook people, things that keep them going. Sometimes not necessarily like a material reward, such as you would get in a formal review process, performance review, with bonus, raises, etc. That's very formalized. What we find is that people are willing to work for things that don't contribute directly to that. One example is streaks. So streaks from social media, people want to keep it going. X number of days unbroken doing X, Y, Z. Now, that doesn't have a material reward associated with it, but boy, people go crazy trying to keep that streak going. So that's something that we can learn, and we can use that as a motivating factor, especially when you get the whole team involved. Hey, everybody in this team, let's keep the streak going. If I can't do it today, why don't you do it? Take over from me, so let's not break the streak. So that's one way to gamify.
Excellent point.
Yeah, this may sound just fundamental and trivial, but just decreasing complaints from the boss and from the users. I mean, when you initially go, everyone complains about the annual security awareness. It's mundane, it's long, it's boring, right? But it's got to be done. But what we see is, we get folks that are actually excited about our monthly campaigns. And so we measure it through a particular interval, how many employees completed that particular crossword puzzle within, say, 7 days. And as that number continues to increase, we know that we have increasing engagement.
Yeah, those are great points, because sometimes measuring the success of the program could be very difficult to achieve. What about phishing simulations? Do any one of you run phishing simulations? And when the results come back, what actions are taken?
Yeah, well, one of the person that reports to me, she said, hey, I finished the security thing, but then they sent me another email to say to take it again, and so I actually went back and say, hey, what's up? She already finished it. She goes, she did not pass the phishing testing. And I explained to her that she did not pass the testing, and she goes, well, what didn't I pass? I said, we'll never know. That's the whole point, because it's random and surprise, right? And I think, well, you know, corporate emails belongs to the company, so I don't know for sure. But what I think is they're mining the data. Like, if you typically get an email from a vendor, they might fake a vendor email, say, hey, this is your billing. Click here, download your bills, your PDF, and then, but you were not, you know, didn't look at the header fully. You did not look at where it's sent from. So those are the things that I think they're like being a little bit more thorough in the phishing tests.
Thanks, Annie.
Yeah, on the phishing test, I think what's happened over time, and what I've seen in my career, and then with customers that we've worked with, is that people know to check now. So they're asking the questions like, "Hey, do I look at the link? Is that really eBay or PayPal?" But look, phishing has gone pretty mainstream. Yeah, it's very, very good. It's great quality. Gone are the days of the Yoda languages, but the sense of urgency is still there, and people ask the question. So for me, it's always refreshing when somebody calls up and says, "Hey, I got this email from you. Do I need to really wire this $25,000 in 2 days or 2 hours?" Right? And it's like, phishing works. Check. The other thing about the metrics on it, what I've also realized is that testing more frequently than once a year has helped, and it's one of those moments where we just have to step up, tell the business, here's what's happening. Do you want to accept this risk or not? We feel like we should run it again. We should, and whatever the frequency is, it's up to you. But running it more than once a year, how can I put it? More than once a year, and less than a number of times is really up to the business. But we found that the number of click-throughs and the awareness has increased, and the click-throughs have decreased. But it's really something that's fascinating. I've watched over the past couple decades.
Yes, I want to also bring up both the carrots and the stick, the positive and the negative. And I believe that a information security professional should be aware of the two complements. On the negative side, I previously have set up escalating ladders of consequences. So the first failure to spot a phishing simulation will get you just a sternly worded notification from the information security team. But the second one, that notification goes to your manager as well. And then the third one, HR gets involved. And so the training that's assigned keeps increasing. That's the negative, that's the stick.
Can I comment on that real quick? Yeah, so I think, so Derek, I totally agree. And I think for different cultures, we could take different approaches, right? Like this, our carrot and stick was almost like the walk of shame. Like HR got involved, and that helped when you get HR. It helped us get HR involved, and it really, really just helped solidify the carrot and stick methodology. So I'm echoing what he's saying. Once you have HR involved, it's kind of like, wait a minute, you're risking everything inside the company, everything. We'll talk more about that when we talk about systems and data.
So let me round it out with the carrots, the positive side. So for all the submissions that we get from all the end users that are submitting an email suspected of being phished, the team selects one per month, and that person is named Angler of the Month, phishing. So then we have the all-staff meeting where I go to the podium, I announce who that person is, and that person gets $100 payroll credit. A very nice carrot.
Very good.
The only thing I have to add is, if you ever want to build your justification for budget for phishing campaigns, just make sure you share the results with your senior executives, because most of those guys and ladies are failing the phishing exercises.
Yeah, excellent point. So if an employee loses their money in a company, what happens? The person will call to the HR, they have to justify and answer that. So what if they happen more and more and more frequently? So there would be consequences for that. So phishing is no different than that, because once a user clicks on a bad email, the whole company can go down, and we see it over and over. We see it in our own backyard. A company gets breach due to a phishing incident, they use that company's, so to say, valid emails, attack other organizations. So those are great points. I think the organizational culture plays a huge role. Driving this top down is significant, kind of educating on the top, having your director or board of executives be on board and then flow down across horizontal and vertical. So let's say we went from the employees' education awareness, so we have pretty much set up an awareness program in our company. How do you guys take this approach or awareness, including cyber risk, down to your supply chains? Because most of us, we have so many contractors, third-party vendors, and the hierarchy can really cascade downwards. One contractor has subcontractor and so forth. So how do you guys do that in your respective organizations?
Well, our contractors are, in terms of training and everything else, is just like our employees, so we don't really treat them any differently. It's just they get paid differently, but the work that they do is the same as any other employees, so they get the same training, they get the same code review, their team leads have to review all their stuff, and in terms of security training, we do have an engineering security training in addition to general population security training. So engineering, like the data team is also part of an engineering team. So we, myself included, have to do all the engineering training. So, but which is good. We get up to date all the information of all the other stuff, right? Like, you know, password, SQL injection, all that stuff, best practices for app servers and things like that.
So basically, you guys treat your contractor as an extension of your own workforce. Whatever you guys do for your workforce applies to them. Excellent point. Great.
Yeah, so +1, contractors are treated the same for training as the FTEs. Everybody's working together, and I think that the difference really comes down to the contract that's in place between the third party and then the company. Something that we've been seeing, so the training is working between the FTE and the contractor, but some of the things that, not us, but some of our customers, those contractors contract out to another third party. So we start getting into not only third party, but fourth party. And like, who trained them? You know, and how did that happen? So that's something that we've seen a couple times with our customers and the third parties, but something to be aware of when you're working with third parties.
I'd like to also bring up another aspect of BEC, that is business email compromise. So, and let me plug my friends at Abnormal Security again. They should pay me commission. One of the things that the tool does, and I think will be followed by many other vendors as well, is there's a section called vendor base. That is, of all the customers they have, when they detect an email compromise at another organization, but then they can see, just by looking at your employees' inboxes, that you have correspondents within your organization that are receiving email communication from them, that they will note that in the tool so that you have an opportunity to warn your user that when you hear from someone in this organization, you have to be extra cautious because it may not be coming from the person that you've been corresponding to all these years, someone that you trust. It may indeed have been taken over by a third party.
Yeah, I mean, this is fundamentally in third-party risk management. So, I mean, we all have heard TPRM and we know what it's about, but it's really something that needs to be taken seriously. And what we've done at this organization and what I've done at previous organizations is that we lock arm in arm with our GRC team, with the legal and contracts team, as well as with the finance team. And any agreement, before it's executed and vetted, we ensure there's a security addendum attached to every agreement of a third party. We write all the T's and C's of what each of the vendors must comply with to include security awareness training. And we write penalties associated with noncompliance. And then we annually audit. We audit annually the degree of compliance to each of those provisions within the security addendum. And we've terminated contracts and agreements, right, to penalize those third parties.
Excellent point. I think vendor risk management is huge because sometimes, if not most times, our data can be secure. We have security measures in place, but we have little to no control over supply chains unless we take the proactive measure and ask them for certification, amend the contract, do a risk assessment annually or so often, because it's just like a health check. When you go to a doctor, you go through the whole set of exams to see what your health posture is, right? So this is no different than an organization who is holding our data. As far as risk assessment or risk management for vendors, I think Eric, you mentioned about you guys do this annually. What are the methodologies that you guys use to make sure they're compliant, consistently compliant with your requirement?
Yeah, so what we do in the security addendum is we establish a security framework, right? And so we tell them what our security framework is, whether it's NIST, whether it's ISO, whatever it is, right? And we get them to agree to that whatever framework that is, and we'll try to find a happy medium. If a third party is on ISO 27001 and we're in this shop, then we'll find that common control framework. We'll build it into the security addendum. Excellent. Get them to agree, and then there's a regular tag up where we meet at a minimum monthly to talk about things like security incidents, to talk about patching, to talk about vulnerability management. And then we do that annual assessment to grade them on their level of compliance. And they must meet a minimum standard.
Excellent.
I just want to add a little something, more or less like if you have a small shop, third-party vendor, they probably don't have a big IT footprint, and they want to pass you data via Excel, CSV, you guys know about that. And they want you to pass them data, Excel, CSV, whatnot. And it's just passing through the mail server system, right? It's totally hackable. And we try not to do that and say, hey, you need to set up an SFTP server, we need to encrypt it and all that stuff. But eventually you have to do it. Just because they're small startup, they don't have the manpower to do it. You just have to insist that they do that. Because otherwise, it doesn't matter how much money we spent on securing the data, double encryption, encryption in plane, storage, everything. The minute you send it an email, it's bye, see you later. We get hacked, we have no idea which vendor was compromised.
I think, Anna, you raised a great point. As far as this little or mom and pop shop, so to say, we had a lot of this vendor, they call in and they want to become a county or DCFS vendor. So what happened was basically creating that collaborative effort. Sometimes we help them improve their own security based on our requirements. So when you have that relationship with your contract folks and then downstream with people who you contract with, it's mutually beneficial. So we tell them our requirements. And then if they don't have it, we'll help them to become compliant with our requirements and security measures. So it's a total win-win situation. Thank you. Go ahead. Did you want to add, Les?
Just one additional observation. The biggest hack of 2023, the most well-publicized, was the MGM hack, without a doubt. The biggest hack by the numbers was the MOVEit exploit. Well over 1,000 companies in the US, millions of users affected. And to drive home the points that we're making now, for many of the companies that were breached, it wasn't that they used MOVEit, but that their vendors did. So that is how important this topic is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but okay, hold on, Derek. Sorry, but we're talking about that from 2024, 2023, 2022, right? And this isn't, look, Derek's really knowledgeable, and we were talking about, data being the new currency and the oil, the diamond, as we talk about this. But these types of things, third-party risk, we've been talking about for over a decade, right? So it's 2024. Why don't we have that in our contract with the third party to protect our data? And I'm asking that kind of like I'm still kind of confused. It's 2024. Why is it not in our contract? Even if it's a startup company or a mom and pop family-owned business, somebody's got to ask them or coach them and work with them. Sadly, procurement, wait, let me back up. I love procurement. I partner with them on a number of occasions, but sometimes they don't know the right questions to ask. That's why I like your framework, Eric. And I think if we can bring them along with us and explain why we're doing the things, it becomes a true partnership with that third party, because then they understand it. Now, chances are that third party is working with somebody else, or 5 other companies, or 10 other companies. So you can kind of see the ripple effect of systems and data being commingled. But I think if we take the time up front to coach and educate procurement or the third party, it helps us 12 months from now, 24 months from now.
Great point. So it comes down to building that relationship, right? Building that relationship with your contract folks, your procurement folks, and then having that direct open line to the contractors or startups to say, well, this is our requirement. If you want to be part of our revenue, so to say, you have to comply with what our requirements are. So again, that's critical, having that open communication, driving it from the top, bottom, having those open dialogues with your directors, and telling them what happens if things doesn't go well, or if the vendor is not compliant, or they don't have proper measure in place. So I think that goes very far. Now, let's say we have all these things in place. Then incidents happen. So how do you, if you have already built an incident response plan in place, and how do you manage that, and what steps are you putting into your incident response to make sure the effectiveness of an IR? So many times I run into organizations that they have no IR, and you wouldn't believe these are private entities who have lots of money in the budget, and that just surprises me. So at a time of crisis, it's not to build the plan, it's to execute the plan. So.
Yeah, DR, which is disaster recovery, which is backup and recovery. We do a lot of backups, believe me. Backup is super easy, click a button, it's done. Recovery, not so much, right? Recovery is hard. Recovery takes time, takes a lot of resources. We recently had a 2024 planning for our business. We talked about recovery, and my director says, yep, we have a recovery plan. We recover all the database here. I said, okay, yes, but we have real-time streaming. What about that part? What about the processing in between? Oh, no, the database will be up. I said, but database is no good if the real-time streaming is broken. We have a real-time dashboard. We're a roadside assistance company. We want to know what's going on in Nevada right now. How many cars are broken down the side of the road? How many? Tell me. 10? 5? No, we don't know. We need this. We need this up and running. So having a backup is not enough. So this year, we're going to work more on the other stuff, all the connected tissue of the data with the application, and like flipping over different AWS zones, this and that. The second part is really good business continuity plans. And so there's another hack, the colonial pipeline hacks. You remember that, 2021, where they had ransomware, and then they could not, they ran out of gas. They ran out of petrol all across the eastern seaboard. That affected us. We didn't get hacked, but it also affected us. So our providers, people who drive tow trucks, could not, they ran out of gas, they go to the gas station, no gas. So we cannot dispatch anymore. So basically we had to shut down about 6 or 7 states, and we just told our partners, like, hey, this is incident outside of our domain. There's nothing we could do about it. We just cannot dispatch and help those people. So if there's any big incidents over there, they have to call 911, because this is no longer a roadside assistant incident. This is an emergency incident. So that's our continuity plan. We have written it all down. This is similar to the polar vortex. So the polar vortex, some of you are from some of those states, got really cold. Like, let me tell you, I don't know, I'm from Canada, and I don't know if you've tried to jump your car at minus 10 degrees. It's not fun, right? Because you gotta take your gloves off, you gotta touch metal with your bare hands. So same thing with our providers. When there's a very cold weather event, when there's a hurricane in Florida, our providers don't want to go out because it affects them. We have to make sure everything is safe for everybody, including our supplier. So our business continuity plan, we have written it down for our customers. Our customer are auto manufacturer and fleet and rental companies. We just let them know during these types of incidents, we will no longer dispatch our service providers to the area, and it becomes a police matter. So.
Yeah, I think I'm going to echo what Annie's saying. Understanding where the critical apps are, figuring out where the top revenue generating ones, taking inventory, but also making the business aware of them. Successfully, what I've seen deployed successfully is tying that to the business impact analysis and then having tabletop exercises. Like that's almost like crawl, walk, run mentality. Hey, this year let's have a tabletop exercise, and then maybe in year 2 let's unplug that database and then restore it. But I think we have to still bring people along, because even though we have the tabletop and we have some other things in there, it's not until you actually shut the system down and restore it before you know if the process and the systems work. And what I'm always sensitive to is disrupting the business for the testing sake to say we did it. I think a unified approach, just making sure like, hey, look, we are gonna do this in off hours in July at 2 a.m. to make sure that we understand what happens if. That's part 1. Part 2, the lessons learned associated with it. If we don't have the process, the documentation, and the lessons learned, we can't improve it. And we've seen this dozens of times. Through that process, things are missing. So-and-so left the company. Oh, they're not here anymore. Well, what happened? Oh, our third-party provider, it's 2 a.m. there, and it's 4 a.m. here. Are they up? Are they going to run this test with us? So just some things to think about, right? Crawl, walk, run, tabletop exercise in day X. Later on, let's pull the plug on the database and restore it. And then later on, maybe it's a more advanced where you're failing by zones or regions.
Yeah, I echo +1. What do you say? Yeah, I'm there with you. The only thing that I would add is going back to the contract negotiation phase of the third party, right? And one thing that we get caught up just many times over is, when do we want to know? When do we want the vendor to notify us? We want them to notify us within 24 hours, 40 hours of a breach, of a confirmed breach, or a suspected breach. And so that becomes very interesting. And so you have to negotiate around how soon do you want to be notified, and be comfortable with maybe the initial notification is not the best information initially, but as you work through the process or as you work through the incident, the iteration of that incident response gets better, right? So negotiating on how soon you're notified of an incident or a suspected incident, and then working through that process.
Yeah, I think that's very critical, because assessing what is the value of that information to you at that point in time. Do we really want to know right away when the vendor suspects a data breach, or no, we want to wait until it's confirmed there's some investigation or some steps in place before we get notified? Because once we know it, we have to escalate upstream so the board of directors know it as well. So I think those are key points. So when the incident happens, having a business continuity plan in place, it's amazing. But running the recovery and testing those tabletop exercises really goes far, because again, at a time of crisis, it's not to plan the plan or test the plan, it's time to execute the plan. Most of the time, companies don't do that for various reasons, as our panelist mentioned. But having that in place really, really helps you prevent or stops the bleeding as soon as possible. So we can go over and on about these discussions until God knows next year, but I think we are reaching to the end of time. If there are any questions, anyone has any certain questions from the panel members? Yes.
So I do have a question about your security awareness training. So at what point do you, as CISOs, and I know I'm at a cybersecurity conference, but I'm risk assessment, risk management at my company, and I just want to know, at what point do you think maybe the content isn't right?
Change the passwords once every 90 days. That used to be the recommendation, and we stuck with that for a long time. Now, in the financial industry, in the credit union world, we're governed by the NCUA, similar to the banks being governed by the FDIC. So the NCUA came out with a special publication that basically said that upon additional analysis, changing the passwords frequently will not actually produce a discernible benefit to security. And the reason is because when people have to change passwords often, then they are likely to recycle good, or they change the password slightly that are still easy for modern software to crack. So the new recommendation is to have a longer duration, but also longer length of passwords. So our training material, to reflect on what you just said, our training material still said that we have to change passwords frequently. So it's a little bit out of step with the latest NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So yeah, this definitely happens. It's our job to.
Yeah, it's on.
It's absolutely our task, our job, our duty, our responsibility to keep on top of these changing trends and the latest thinking on security-related topics.
It was a supply chain error, the mic.
Yeah, I think, okay, so you're in risk. Now you've got to partner with somebody. Are you building the content internally, or are you going to a company like KnowBe4? KnowBe4, turn it on. I know because used it. It's fun, relevant, modern content. I think part of the challenge is like, Derek's saying, it's kind of like, okay, what do I do if it's, maybe not so up to date, and, are you doing your own graphics and or images? Is it time to build in-house or buy off the shelf? And that, I mean, there are so many cool LMSs now and programs and things that are out there. I would encourage you to maybe think about going outside. You have to bring people along, right? Because if it's being developed by the CISO or, his or her team, then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, am I stepping on toes? And just being sensitive. Because it's almost like, this is the way I found how it worked for myself. Hey, look, I'm not an expert in everything. I've got to go to somebody that writes or talks about these things. Maybe it's one vendor or two, like Jim Manico Security, right? Jim for application security, but KnowBe4 for some of the policies, procedures, and standards. And just having multiple teams going through modern content. I can't do that. I'm not an expert in that, and I can't devote 80 hours a week to, or 40, whatever my workload is. But you see what I'm saying? It's like, if I'm not an expert in doing that full time, there are companies out there that dedicate armies of people and hours and resources to make sure they're up to date.
Yeah, just a quick add there. So I was talking to my sons. I have twin boys. They're in high school. And they don't have that many passwords yet. I mean, they only have 20 passwords. They only use 5, okay? And they made it long. They're like, Mom, I made it long. I'm like, no, you can't do that. You gotta change. I told them about the password management, get it all set up and stuff. But the problem is you can't control what other people do. Some people are gonna recycle password in different, credential stuffing. So things that you can do as an organization is maybe salt your password in your application and save it. So even if they're breached somewhere else because someone used it in 23andMe, which got hacked, 23andMe, and then they use that password to log into your application, you're safe because you salted it. So there are things that you can do and things you can't do, but you try to as a risk assessor, you try to make best practices for your engineering team as well as training.
So I'll add to that. Basically, having those canned trainings are great. It does, from the compliance perspective, it does have a value to it. But I think what we try to do is make it relatable to the operation and business of the organization that these people are doing. So for example, in our world, social workers, again, I have to make sure they understand why they have to take this training. Having some live sessions, of course, it's very difficult to go around and do it across, but maybe having once a month, gather them for about 40 minutes, have them live training, so it's a kind of a dialogue. They get to know you, or you get to know them. You explain to them what the real life examples happen in your own backyard. So I think that goes very far. Any other comments? Questions? Yes.
I think you just covered it right now, but I was about to say people have a lot of different. I think you just covered it right now, but I was about to say people have a lot of different learning methodologies, and KnowBe4 is great when you see it at the beginning of the year, and maybe quarterly or maybe half a year or whatever, but sometimes learning things visually or auditorily isn't always the best way for everybody. And I think you're covering that aspect of bring people in and have monthly,
Engaging them,
quarterly
yep.
engagement where you're seeing
Absolutely.
the real world applications of how this applies to your situation. But I'm wondering what organizations can do to, in the moment when an incident is actually occurring, learn hands-on, like, hey, I did the wrong thing, but here's the right direction to go.
So I'll start first. What I do, it goes from the simulation, the phishing simulations that we do. We bring back the repeated offenders, so to say. At first session, everybody was scared, skeptical, like being called to the principal's office. But once they realized this is like more of an learn situation where we learn from them, they learn from us. It was interesting, one user said, well, how do I check if a link, a URL in an iPhone email is legit? It's like, oh, that's trivial to me, but that's a great question. I never thought about that. So let's put that in our training. So sometimes the basics go really far. Again, bringing them on board, making them part of the solution, not the problem. I think that helps.
To add to that idea, I think getting the buy-in from the user and explaining to them, getting the buy-in from the user and explaining to them, we win together by protecting and you are a part of that process. It's not just top down.
They become
it starts
partner
from the
of
bottom.
security, and they become your champions.
I like that you're doing that.
Okay, guys, well, I think that's it for our panel members and our time. So round of applause for great panel members. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Now, all the sponsors, you may break down that, sorry, we went a little long today.